What's going on, guys? This is Joe Tallarico, and you're listening to the Aha Moment podcast, where we find regular people who said no to playing it safe, failed along the way, and are in the middle of their grind to the top. Here's how they think when everyone else tells them no. Today's guest is Marc Stcherbina. Finally getting that one after struggling with it all interview. We get into this former professional rugby player's broken neck injury during the game and how that reshaped his mindset from that of negativity and depression to one of abundance and a pursuit of happiness. We also get into how he now pays that forward by trying to share that message and wisdom with athletes and people alike and shifts their mindset into one of abundance and a pursuit of happiness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today I am here with Marc Stcherbina. I said that right?
Nearly.
Uh-oh.
There's a T in there somewhere. Stcherbina.
Stcherbina.
Yeah,
Stcherbina.
I know. Okay. You're not the only one, Joe. Don't worry. I've had this my whole life. Having to repeat my surname. It's Russian for all you folks wondering what kind of crazy name it is.
So tell them a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, where you're from.
Okay, I'll tell you a bit. I am obviously Australian. So I was born in Sydney, and up until the age of 25, I lived in the southern suburbs of Sydney by the beach. I'm very, very fortunate to grow up in a beautiful part of the world like that. Always active in sport, and sport actually ended up being my profession. I played rugby. Rugby's quite big in Australia. And played from a young age, but at the age of 20, I became professional, and that took me overseas as well. A lot of travel with rugby, which again, I'm very, very grateful for. And I ended up playing in France for a couple of years, and then that took me on a journey around the UK and ended up in England. And I finished playing my professional career in Wales, of all places, in Cardiff, which was a lot of fun. I lived there for 5 years. That was 2009 when I retired from rugby, and I've actually lived in LA ever since, really. I had one more year in the UK before I followed my dreams over here, and I've been here 6.5 years, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in depth.
That's awesome. Did you know at an early age that you could take rugby professionally?
No, I in fact, well, it's funny because there's two versions of rugby that are played in especially Australia and New Zealand and England, and one is Rugby League and the other one is Rugby Union. Not to bore your listeners out there, but Rugby League, it was actually professional. So growing up, that version of the game is kind of like NFL. So it's big in Australia and played around Australia, but not many other places in the world are as good at rugby league as the Australians are. So it was professional for a long time. So I grew up watching that on TV, and at times pretending that I was certain players. So I dreamed of being a professional. I guess I knew that was possible. But when I went to high school, we actually played the other version, which is rugby union, and that started in private schools in England. So it was very niche, if you know what I mean. But it was played in a lot of countries around the world, and they actually have a World Cup that started in 1987, but was amateur. So I didn't know much never thought about playing that version of the game, because I was all hell-bent on playing this rugby league version, because that's what I grew up with, and that's where you can make money, or you can be this star and have all the glory in that regard. And rugby union was just this sort of strange game that didn't know much about, but Australia played, and they won the World Cup one year, and that's when it exploded in popularity in 1991. And I went to an academic high school that played that version. Didn't know much about it, so it was compulsory to play sport at my school. So I chose that because it's similar to what I was already doing with rugby league, and that opened up my world. That opened up my eyes to the tradition and the values of this version of the game. Being amateur obviously helped because it was about the love of the game, but because of its popularity and its appeal worldwide, kind of like soccer, it was inevitable that it was going to become professional. So Rupert Murdoch actually threw $200 million in and said, I want this on my TV channels. And that's when it became a reality. I was in high school And actually only then did I start seriously considering a career in rugby. And sure enough, it became professional 2 years after I left school. I went to university and studied sports science, and actually picked up a professional contract while I was studying. So I had to balance the two. And I haven't looked back since.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you were saying how you were on different teams all over the world. That must be an amazing experience itself, just experiencing different cultures along the way and adapting. And we were kind of talking about you being in France before and being immersed in the culture. That's got to be awesome in shaping who you were at that age.
Absolutely. And that's because I had an opportunity to still play rugby league, the professional version, which doesn't necessarily offer that travel and that cultural experience that's available that rugby offered, rugby union. We just call it rugby union. And I already identified that at a young age. So I could have earned more money and chose the other version that I'd grown up idolizing certain players and having the dreams of perhaps playing that. Yet my eyes were open to the opportunities that the other version offered, which was travel. I could go and play in different countries. I mean, what really did it for me was I was selected for the Australian schoolboys team as a 17-year-old, and we went on an 8-week trip around Europe and France and stayed with 13 different families and played in massive stadiums and as a teenager. And the other version didn't offer that to me. So when I came down to the decision, and it was a tough life decision, I could have chosen one path, and that was to go down the pure professionalism route and sort of be with a team and get traded and all that sort of stuff. Or I could choose this relatively unknown, not as much money yet in rugby union, but look at all the other opportunities available and the travel. That was more appealing to me. So I chose that path, and like I said, I never looked back. It was the best decision I made.
How was the support system with that decision? Were a lot of them like, no, go professional, go on the rugby league?
My immediate support system, I guess, was my family, and they were great. I think they were relieved that I chose the path I did, because it was more of a holistic approach to life than just kind of money driven. They understood the differences in culture, and without going into it now, there were just clear differences between the rugby league culture and the rugby union culture. So I never really, not that I don't recall being pushed in any direction or the other direction, which was really nice as well, and allowed me just the freedom to make that choice and have no regrets about it.
Okay. And then at a certain point in your career, you had a neck injury, right? That kind of put you out of the game, or?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how does something like that's huge, here, you have your whole career kind of set for you, you're living the life, and now an injury that takes you out of the game has completely changed your outcome. How does that affect the way you think about life and where you were headed? Again, one of the worst things that's ever happened to me, and the absolute best thing that's ever happened to me. Now, I was fortunate, Joe, that happened. It ended my career. I broke my neck. I fractured C4 and C5 vertebra. Wow. I was paralyzed for 25 minutes from the neck down. So there's more to that neck injury than just it ended my career and what do I do next. There was a defining moment, and it's still vivid because I was completely conscious during the whole thing. I was trying to make a tackle, and it wasn't malicious at all. It was fairly innocuous, but I have that 25 minutes still vivid in my head. Well, I wouldn't say vivid because a lot was going on in my brain right then. So many different voices. There was panic. There was fear. There was just the unknown. There was confusion. I went into shock, obviously, and had to have oxygen because I couldn't feel anything. So you can imagine, if you imagine now, suddenly you're lying on the ground, you have a sharp pain in the back of your neck, that's the only thing you can feel, and then you can't grip, you can't move. So I didn't know what was going on. And I switched from, I'm going to be okay, this is fine, even if you're paralyzed, there'll be the Paralympics, I can put ramps in my house. Like these kind of conversations were going on in my head, because I guess that was almost habitual. And that's what
a career in rugby allowed me to build as well, just that resilience and, very stoic kind of way of thinking and optimistic. But then the other voice just comes in and this is, my life's over. This is it. Like, why me? It's completely natural that came in. So I had 25 minutes of these voices going on that I can, and we'll talk about this obviously, and I'll refer back to this, but that is a moment, a defining moment that I can always source whenever I'm doubting, whenever I'm struggling, or if I start to play victim, I just drop into that and just remember, like, life is so short. I was given a second chance, and if I want to complain about anything, I just kind of think back to that moment and use it as motivation, because shortly after all that fear and uncertainty came instant relief and overwhelming relief, which I'll also never forget in my life, is when feeling started to come back. And I knew from that moment that I would be able to walk again, and that everything's going to be all right. But I was so close to everything not being all right that I can't waste this now.
That's so wild. Like, I can't... Here we are, I'm interviewing people that, lost a job, or, I can't make the decision to move somewhere. And here you are about to lose all functionality and have to realistically think what is going to happen to you next. And that's insane. How do you, like, in that position, how do you even, like you were saying, you can either look at it and look at, like, all right, Paralympics, what else can I do? How can I keep this moving? Or you could, what a lot of other people do is just sink down and say, I'm worthless. I can't do anything. My life's over. Yeah. How do you fight that? How do you choose the better end of that and stay towards that?
Yeah, so it's probably important to point out the stage of my career that happened. That definitely has an effect on my ability to kind of to rise above. And I again was fortunate that it was toward the end. I'm not sure the conversation we'd be having now if that happened when I was 23. So when my career just starts, it just gets going. And then at 23, I have to retire because of an injury. There might be different conversations. I doubt it. I would have come, I think, around to the same position I'm in a different path. But it definitely had an effect on me that, okay, so I was 32 when it happened. I was looking at winding down my career. I maybe had 2 or 3 seasons maximum left in me, so it was premature, but not completely. Okay. So I already was starting to think about the next stage, which helped. I also, this is another crazy part of the story, I'll tell you quick. There was an insurance company going around signing players up to help protect them against, or us against, career-ending injuries, and also income protection if you were wrongly dismissed or whatever, something happened with your contract. These things can be expensive, so we were considering whether it was worth it. But basically, cut a long story short, they managed to convince me just to, look, why don't you just sign, the policy, and you're coming toward the end of your career, just sign it, go home and think about it. You got 2 weeks cooling off period. If you figure out it's not for you, or it's too expensive or not worth it, then you can just cancel it within 2 weeks. So I did that on the Wednesday. I signed on the Wednesday before the Saturday when I broke my neck playing, and I'm lying there in my hospital bed, with a kind of a body brace on, just recovering from this neck injury. And one of the first things I was thinking about was, does that insurance policy stick? Did this happen too soon? Because, Joe, that was huge, financial, and it's a big part of people's, fears and anxiety is around money. And when you retire prematurely from sport, it happens to athletes all the time. They're earning this inflated salary, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And especially if they haven't put something in place to ease them into that, possibly not earning the same kind of money, but they've got some kind of buffer to allow them to figure it out. And it's not so abrupt that it's like, now I need a job because I've got all these bills. So you see what I'm saying? Like, there's different athletes have different responses to that. But mine was, so I was definitely fortunate to have that insurance policy that then paid me a salary for the next few years to help me with the next step. That was a blessing, and in a way it was a curse, because it allowed me to get into my comfort zone. So that happened 7 years ago, and since then I feel like I haven't created what I'm capable of creating in terms of dreaming big. Yes, I've needed the time to figure it out, but I think if I didn't have that policy in place, it might have produced a little bit more anxiety, but it might have actually created a bit more urgency to get moving and creating. So I'm 40 years old now. And I look back and I think what I'm ready to do now, the mindset and the shift that I've had now, and I'm dreaming big, I'm playing big, and I'm hell-bent on achieving that. I feel like that would have been nice if I was at this point 5 years ago, because imagine what I could have created now. But then it's very important to not have regrets and just know that however this has happened, however long it's taken for me to get to this point, was supposed to happen. And that allows me then to move forward, because as you know, if we become attached or have regrets or have resentments, and we're holding on to anything in the past, it just pulls you back from moving forward in the future.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I've had moments, even like a lot of the mindset changes I'm learning now. Sometimes I think, man, why didn't I learn this when I first moved out here 5 years ago? I could have been so much farther ahead. And it's like you said, you can't hang on to that, because what happened. It needed to happen in that time frame.
Right.
And it's what you do.
Absolutely. Or how do you know that, that stuff, it was available for you, or if you had learned it, it didn't sink in properly because you were at an age or, at a maturity that it wouldn't have landed as well as it is for you right now. So, yeah, I'm a firm believer that everything's happening the way it should be. Awesome. It's supposed to be, yeah.
So then what brought you out to LA?
Well, it was a woman. That's often the case with funny talkers like me. They end up in LA. Yeah, I was, like I said, I'd retired, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take some time off. I'd saved some money through my career as well as the insurance money that was a little kind of top up and a buffer. So I didn't need to work immediately. And I said, I got my Saturdays back now. I'm just going to go and do some traveling, and I'm going to go home. I haven't been home for Christmas for 8 years, so I was just going to enjoy that. And on my travels, came out to LA. I had some buddies out here, and I came out every summer in my off season playing in the UK. I mean, the weather is so awful for 10 months of the year, 11 months sometimes. Even in summer over there, it's crappy weather. So one of the things I like to do was when we finish rugby in May, and we've got 1 month to go and recharge and rejuvenate and get some sun, get some vitamin D somewhere. I'd come out to LA or, New York, and I had some buddies out here. And as I came out, I really started to enjoy the US, and I obviously love the climate. It's very important for me to have, sunshine, and I love waking up here and having the sunshine, 95% of the time. It's
amazing what it does to your mood to have that.
Absolutely. It's and what's amazing is the other end of the spectrum, what it can do for your mood when you have 26 days in a row of drizzle, and which I did have, by the way, in the UK. So that was a big factor for me in considering moving to a place like this. And on one of my trips, I met my girlfriend at the time, and we started having kind of like a long distance thing, which neither of us agree that we do. It's just something we don't do. And I'm like, well, I was thinking about moving to New York. I'm developing some connections out there, but LA's pretty sweet as well. What do you say? Should we give it a go?
And she's like, from back home.
She's actually from Dana's from Long Island, New York, and she'd lived out here for 15 years at the time. So we gave it a crack, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best circumstance to get in a relationship. I moved straight in with her into a 1-bedroom place. I was, I had no credit history. I was a ghost in this, I was relying heavily on her, and it kind of put a bit of pressure on her. And she was in work mode, survival mode, hustle mode, which is very synonymous with LA.
Yeah.
Most people in LA, she was living that LA hustle life. And I'm like, hey, I got time and I need to work.
Relax.
Let's go away. Come on, let's go on a hike. And she's like, I'd love to, but I've got auditions, I've got this, I've got work, and we just weren't in alignment in that respect, among other things. So after a year, we decided it wasn't to be, but we're still very good friends, to date, which is special, and it's nice. And I always acknowledge her, and I'm grateful that I met her, because she brought me out here. She was the reason why I'm living this amazing life right now.
It was the catalyst.
It was a catalyst. It was definitely,
awesome.
not the sole reason, but definitely the catalyst. And I acknowledge her for that as much as I can.
That's awesome. And then now what made you switch or come up with the Rugby Method and the coaching side?
Right. So it's funny. The Rugby Method is a training system that I developed, and it was on the back of the visa that I first obtained, which it's called a P1. For people that don't know, it's like an O1, which is based on your area of expertise. So it's specialised. So because of my rugby background, having played for Australia and reaching whatever level that I reached, it qualified me to get a visa based on a rugby player. So the problem with that, or the challenge I should say with that, is that I then can only do work related to rugby in order to earn an income legally.
Yeah.
So with rugby not being massive in the United States, there weren't a lot of opportunities to earn money, right? There's only literally a handful of jobs that can pay a salary, like coaching or whatever, in rugby in America. That's changing. But at the time, nearly 7 years ago, it was like, well, what can I do to make money? So I'm a qualified personal trainer. So I thought, well, I'm going to do my training and I'm going to train people, but it's got to have a rugby element to it to, enable me to earn money legally. Let's do it. Let's combine a rugby kind of element to it, call it Rugby Method. And also that was a pretty cool point of difference in Los Angeles, which is the mecca of health and fitness and extremely competitive out there. It was a saturated kind of marketplace, and I just thought, well, this could give a nice point of difference as well, and that, LA people love something different. The challenge was, again, like not having it be a fad, and it's more or less been just something that's been bubbling on the side that I've enjoyed doing, and it's not been my sole income, obviously, but just a nice way to build community, and I'm still doing that now. I'm moving away from that into my vision now, which we'll talk more about, but it's nice to have that on the side and keep the training aspect to it. I like training people, and I have one-on-one business as well, and some rugby coaching, because more and more kids are getting into rugby. So I've found that there's actually quite a lot of kids out there and parents for that matter, that want to get their kids into rugby. So
that's awesome.
I can help them with that.
Yeah, for sure. And what is, was it only since that injury that you developed this mindset, or did you have a mindset growing up as a kid or an experience that allowed you to have this go forward attitude versus fall back on negativity?
That's a really good question. If I don't think there's any one thing I can attribute this way of being to my childhood, apart from, I was a good kid from all reports, pretty level-headed, and I think the thing was supportive parents. The fact that they provided me opportunity but didn't push me in any certain direction, just was kind of like, here, how about this? And I had an older sister as well, so I got to see whatever she jumped into, I would I want to do that too.
Yeah.
So, my dad's got a sporting background, and he played rugby, and he was a track star. He was a track athlete, so he was quick. So naturally, he was kind of like my coach growing up. He would take me to athletic meets. We call it little athletics. I mean, Australians we do everything. I feel sorry for parents. My sister right now has 2 kids, and she is like taking them to water polo, and from water polo training they go to rugby training, and then on the weekends they've got junior lifeguards, and then they've got little athletics, and it's just non-stop. Then we've got the state titles next week, we've got to travel away to here, then we've got the regionals. But that is, I think about it, I was like, that was my upbringing, and which was great, because getting into team sports. So I think it was getting into team sports and just that conditioning of being part of a team, and I had some influential coaches along the way, and certain things stick with you that they teach you. And I think if I think of attributes from my parents, very, my mum has amazing work ethic, as does my dad. And my dad has a very kind of, I think I get my easygoing sort of go with the flow attitude and personality from my dad, which can be limiting. And I've had to work on certain aspects of my character that is a little bit too go with the flow and people pleasing, and that's something that I'm working on now, that I need to break through to achieve what I want to achieve. So, yeah, I think opportunity and from the people that I met along the way and the mentors that I had along the way, given those opportunities and given the choice, and not just be forced into anything, which is probably why I wasn't a rebellious kid. I'm assuming. Some kids are quite rebellious and they just want to defy what they're being pushed to do. Whereas it was like, let's take you, even high school, my mother, I thank her for this every day. I wanted to go to a certain high school where my friends were going. And just because my friends were going, it was high school. I didn't see the benefit, or I didn't choose or want to choose a high school because it's the best education there. And it's going to be the best environment for me. It's like, no, Jimmy and Johnny and Davo and all that, they're going, I want to go with them. So my mother was like, well, yeah, you could do that. Look, we could go and we'll go to the orientation and enroll in that school. But she'd actually been encouraged by my elementary school teacher at the time, or middle school teacher. I think it's middle school here before high school, right? Yeah. So, I was one of the best performers in my school, and I had the sport thing, but I had the academics thing, and there was a high school that catered to both those. It was an academic high school with a very proud sporting tradition. So perfect, right? All round. And they put that idea in my mother's head. So she wanted me to go to this school to have that opportunity. So she just very gently enrolled me into the idea of, why don't we just do the exam to enter the school and just see if you get in? Would you like to know if you were able to get in there? You don't have to go. So little by little, she's like, I did that exam, I passed. And I'm like, there, you happy? I passed. All right, can I go to my other school now with my friends? And she's like, well, it'd be silly not to go to the orientation day now that you've passed, just to see what it's like. Who knows? And if you don't like it, then absolutely, while enroll, you go to the other school. So, you know where this is going, right? So then I go to the orientation day and I'm like, wow, it's actually pretty cool. It's an all-boys school, which I didn't like. Boys, everyone's wearing ties. But I met a couple of friends there who were in the same boat as me. Like they were scared, they were kind of overwhelmed, they didn't want to go to this school, but we connected, and then something just told me that and even then she's like, well, why don't you just go for 6 months? We can always pull you out if you don't like it. Like, I had to travel an hour and a half to get there one way. It's a 3-hour round trip. So this was a stretch, but something, I don't know what it is. It was definitely my mother's gentle persuasion, but I stayed in that school, and like I said, it took me to obviously amazing opportunities. It pushed me in academics. All of a sudden now I've come from the best in my school to now, I was bottom 10, first up. I was like in shock. You got the smartest kids from all over the state coming into this school, which I've learned is, the phrase, it's better to be, the least intelligent person in the room rather than the smartest person in the room. So go find that room whether it be networking or a party or something. It's a great metaphor for always challenge yourself. And that school challenged me, and it provided me the opportunity to play that version of rugby that I spoke about before, which then took me overseas, which then gave me a 12-year career, which has allowed me to end up here. And it all starts from my mother just giving me the opportunity and putting it in front of me and saying, but it's your choice. And and I'm so glad she took that approach, because I made the choice.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things in there. Even in the beginning of that story, when you spoke about how everyone back home, their kids do everything, I think that alone instills a good work ethic. Because if you're used to doing sport after sport after sport, when you get older, you're not going to be someone who slums around. You're going to be someone that's like, I'm used to always having something in a regimen and following that. So I think that starts that work ethic, and then like what she had you doing.
And absolutely, and that it does. It contributes to a culture, right? So the different countries have different cultures, and that is definitely the Australian culture is. So then the kids, they jump into it, but obviously the parents, they're the ones putting the effort in and driving their kids around and making the sacrifices to pay for the uniforms and the registration fees and finding the time to fit it all in. So, hats off to the parents, but that's part of the culture. They know you fall in line with that culture, and there's a lot of benefits from that. But team sports, absolutely, that for me was, there's individual sports, obviously, that kids can get into. There's just so much choice, but it is very sport orientated. And being on the coast as well, swimming, you look at the US team's amazing with their swimming team, but the Australians are not far behind given the popularity. And that's because pretty much soon after you can open your eyes, you've thrown into a pool. You're just learning swimming from, and that's another great metaphor for life, right? Just jumping in, just getting thrown in, and then
giving it a try. And even how your mom did it, that was a great metaphor for life, where it's just like, why don't you just try this, see how it is. I think a lot of times people mistakenly, let's take moving to California. People are always amazed that I moved to California. Yeah. It's not like a permanent, I feel like they word it where they think it's permanent, where it's like, how are you going to live the rest of your life? Well, we don't know what that is. If you're thinking about moving, why not just try it for a month? If you don't like it, you can move back home. Why does it have to be this drawn out, how am I going to survive 3 years later? Exactly. Well, you're looking way too far in the future already.
Yeah. You're so right, Joe. That is, and that's a big thing. That is, a lot of people have those fears that they create in their own head of the unknown. They consider it the unknown. But as you said, what's the worst that can happen? Just try it.
Yeah. I forgot where I heard it, but someone was saying it's so much easier for us to justify in our heads why not to do something than it is to do something. And I think that's something people really need to be more self-aware of. Yeah. Just am I saying something because I'm uncomfortable I'm uncomfortable being uncomfortable, or am I saying something because it's a legitimate fear?
Yeah.
And it's acknowledging that and facing it head on.
That's the key, as you said, Joe, is the awareness first and foremost. And there's a lot of resources out there that, and it's great that you're doing this podcast, because this is one of the resources to encourage people to take the first step. And you're doing that now by listening to this, and read books, and then read another book. And then once you get on that path, and that's actually what brought me to where I am after you mentioned the injury. I was in a dark place. So I think it's important to mention that. It wasn't a matter of broke my neck, had a scary moment, got back off my feet, dusted myself off, and now it's smooth sailing. I went through, during the recovery, I lost my relationship. I now no longer have a career that I was used to for 12 years of the camaraderie of the team. I'm no longer, and yes, I can hang out with the guys, but it's not the same. So that's, I guess, I don't know if you're okay with, then this is a segue into what I'm doing now, or we can come back to that. But I was on the brink. I was on the top of a slippery slope. I started drinking heavily to self-medicate. What, for me, I didn't realize at the time, but when I look back, was clear that depression started to set in, because I already had a tendency. I was already an overanalyzer. I wasn't living in the present. I always have that what if sort of mentality. It's like, what if? So it was fear. I had a lot of fear-based thoughts. So when it came to what am I going to do with my life now, well, those fears kicked in. Even though I had some financial security, that didn't negate the fact that I spent 12 years of my life just focusing on this skill and this profession. Yes, that can transfer into other professions, but there's other elements to that unique environment that will never be replicated. So it was navigating through those thoughts and those fears, and I had this lack mentality. It's like, well, I no longer have this. Rather than, let's get excited about the opportunity ahead. There's actually a lot of opportunity. I was stuck in this depression and thinking, I no longer have this. What am I going to do without this? And it took one of my teammates who was very self-aware. We were having coffee one day and I was speaking like that the whole time. I'd just broken up with my girlfriend. What if I made a mistake? What if she was the best thing in my life? And what am I doing? What if I don't find the career? What if I don't find my purpose? Like, he just said, stop, right? We're having coffee. I remember this clear as day. And he had his little man bag, very metrosexual guy, had his little merce, right? And he pulls out of his man bag, he's got this book, and he's like, I'm halfway through it, but you need this more than me right now. And it was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, good, give it to me. And the next day I woke up, because that was afternoon or early evening. Next day I woke up and I went to the park and I read that book cover to cover.
Wow.
I must have sat in that book. That doesn't mean I'm a fast reader, right?
Yeah.
I was in that park a long time. But it was what I needed, and it was landing with me because of, I guess, the frenzy that I'd kind of whipped my mind into about, and the fear and the what if and what next. And there was some urgency there to kind of get direction and calm my mind. And that, my point is, that then I got so much out of that it set me on a path of self-growth, and that led to more books, and that led to podcasts, and that led to and just it's almost like a serotonin and like dopamine hit, like learning, you know what I mean, and just it landing, going, oh my God, just the realization, or the aha moments, right?
Yeah.
So all the aha moments where it's like, I never thought I was egotistical. I read that book, I'm like, I'm the most egotistical dude, like in different ways. There's different ways to be, egotistical, or I just didn't understand my relationship with my own ego, or what the ego was, really. So that made things so clear and allowed me then to move on and just and grow and grow and grow and become more and more emotionally intelligent, which gave me the coping skills to and shift my mindset then into, now I have opportunity. That career was great and I'm thankful for it, and even just showing gratitude for what I achieved, as opposed to, man, I would have liked to have achieved more. What if I was more committed to that? I would have, what if I made that choice? It's like everything was great, and I'm taking what I need to move forward, and I'm excited that there's so much more to learn.
What, for someone who might be listening that maybe is entering that slippery slope or hitting just that spiral of like, I don't know if I can get out, is there like one or two tips you can give them on how to like get out of that and start the spark in the other way to break through that depression?
Yeah, I mentioned it before. I think the first thing is gratitude. And that is something, obviously, like I said, that's kind of easy for me to tap into, because I was at a stage, I was paralyzed, and then I was able to walk again. So, and it's a practice. So being grateful for whatever you are now, and it just brings perspective on how much worse it could be. So as soon as you start showing gratitude for whatever your physical capabilities are, the people that you have in your life and focusing on what they've given you and the joy, and focus on the joy, and even just walk outside if it's a sunny day, look at the sun and say, I'm thankful for you, sun. Like, you have to actually say it. Your words are powerful. And I've learned that it's impossible, as Tony Robbins says, it is impossible to be depressed when you're being thankful for something or somebody. So try it, practice it. Reading books is great. It sets you on the path, but then it's about practice.
Practicing what
you're learning. Like, practice it to then you're building those muscles, because it's very easy to slip. Same as playing a sport, playing rugby. I needed to practice kicking the ball. You play soccer, you got to practice, kicking, tennis. How often are you practicing to perfect that shot?
And it's deliberate practice, making sure you're making small wins and better than you were the day before, and paying attention to that.
Yeah. So I really think that's a great way. And as you mentioned, if they are depressed, is to start thinking and acting out of gratitude, and then other things that'll hopefully lift you and elevate you into the right kind of mindset, to then be open to the many, many other resources and other coping skills that you can develop to help take you to new heights.
That's awesome. That's very, very good advice. And I hope anyone listening really takes that to heart. And if they're going through that, I hope that really helps you move forward in the positive direction.
It will.
And now, when it comes to goal setting, how do you set goals? How do you map it out by the year? How do you go about making sure you're achieving those small goals?
Yeah, I do. It's very important, and something that I learned all through my career. We always had goal setting sessions. We had motivational speakers come in, but I think for me now is what's really important for me is to actually have that. I never necessarily had the vision. So having a vision that is actually the driving force behind my way of being and getting up every day and having that purpose, which I know a lot of listeners out there, and me included up until now, struggled with that. What is my purpose? And that is the first thing. If you can have a purpose and then a vision, that's big. Think big, dream big, and declare it. So say what you're going to do and absolutely attach a time frame to it. Then you can work back to the more short-term goals, or there's even a long-term goal or a couple of long-term goals to reach that vision. I set a vision, and it's to reach people in line with my purpose, and just as you're doing here, and that's to reach and influence as many people as possible. And if you put a number on it, it helps because it makes it real. So, I want to reach 1 million people. How does that look? I'll figure that out. There's a number of different ways. It could be a podcast like yours. It could be seminars, and a number of seminars, but it's a program that I'm developing as well for athletes. So I'm going to reach a certain amount of athletes with some emotional intelligence training, and then that could spill over then into, other areas, business. So I have that vision of, and the purpose is to influence people and educate them on emotional intelligence and empower them in their own vision. My long-term goals then I will set, for me, it's different for everyone and what resonates with people. Some people get a little bit too overwhelmed by having a goal that's set too far in the future, or it's meaningless to them. That's where I said my vision is important to have that. Yes, that's my purpose, and it's my reminder of why I'm doing this. But then the goals are more purposeful. And it might be you might need to set yourself a long-term goal of a year. 12 months might seem more realistic to you. And then I actually set weekly, daily, monthly. I have monthly goals as well, and in all areas of life. So I'm trying to achieve balance as well.
That's awesome. And what do you do on, let's say someone sets a mini goal and they either aren't able to achieve it, or for whatever reason, the motivation's just not there that day, and they feel like they're falling behind? How do they break out of that?
Yeah, here's the tricky part. So, and that's practice. Goal setting is a practice. So setting goals that are actually realistic and achievable is important. And sometimes it takes time to figure out, all right, well, that was ambitious. That was ridiculous, to set that goal for the week. And I find that, especially when I'm trying to achieve balance, I set myself over a month how my week would look. And I figured out there's just not enough hours in the day to achieve everything that I put down. So then, the following month, it's like, this is how it looks. This is how my week looks. Use your resources like Google Calendar. There's some great apps like Wunderlist that I use, which is like a task. It's like a to-do list thing. And so, you can chat about that later or in your notes. I don't know if that's what you do. You can provide that for people. Notes, so there's so many resources out there to use for the finer details. But learning how to realistically set your goals so that you have small victories along the way. That's the key. We were speaking about it before. Some people have a tendency, if I'm not hitting my goals, then they quit or they go on to try something else. And that could be for a number of reasons. They're always trying different things is because they don't have their vision and their purpose set. So they want something to land with them, and that's okay. Take your time to figure that out. But really understand what is your why, what is your passion, tap into that passion, and then everything else should fall into place. So what I recommend is don't, and the other tricky part to it is not being attached. So set your goal, set your intention, set your declaration so it's out there and you make it specific. Because if you just say something like, you know what, this month I'm gonna get to the gym more. Yeah. How many people out there set those goals like, I'm gonna get to the gym more, I'm gonna get fitter. Well, what does that mean? Yeah. How does that look? It's very easy to just stray and not go after that goal because it's not specific and it doesn't mean anything. As soon as you say, you know what, I'm going to get fitter. That's my vision. I want to be a certain size, a certain weight, a certain fitness, whatever by this date. So weekly, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times on these days at this time. And then obviously getting personal trainers and stuff like that can help you go even more specific. Like, and here's my program and I got to stick to it. Now you're more likely to achieve that goal. Simple.
Yeah, they even say, I like this method I learned from a nutrition coach where you got to put on a scale of 1 to 10. When you come up with the new habit, think on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you will follow it 100%. How likely are you to follow that habit? So if you say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week and you answer a 7, it's not good enough. You got to simplify it, make it 2 days, make it 1 day till you say, oh, that's so easy, I can do it. And then to add to that, one thing I've come up with is your body or your mind based on your mind likes small wins, like psychological wins. I think we were talking about this before. If it doesn't get those wins, you feel like a failure. Yeah. So to capitalize on that 1 to 10 scale, I know 3 days or 4 days, whatever they choose, might seem easy, but I would almost say start off with 1 or 2 days because you'll know you'll definitely get that. And if you did get the 3 days, not only did you achieve your goal, but now you're like, wow, I completely demolished my goal. Whereas if they send something audacious like 5 days and they don't achieve it, let's say on the 1 day a week, they make it once, they've achieved their goal. If they set 5 days and they only make it once, technically they've achieved the same goal as that original one, but in their mind now, because it wasn't 5, they failed. And that completely messes them up for the future. And that's where people start saying, oh, I only went once this week and I only went once the week before. Make it an easier goal so it's a bigger win, and anything you do overshoots it. And that's chances are you'll probably go more than once a day or once a week, and it's a bigger win.
100%. So the moral in that is avoid setting yourself up for failure. Set yourself up for victory. But at the same time, just know when you're being a little bit too comfortable. Know that if you're setting the bar low so it's achievable all the time, you're not necessarily growing. And that's back to my point of not having attachment, is set the goal, but you need to also practice not being disappointed and feeling defeated should you not achieve that goal. It's, again, a learning experience. It's an opportunity to say, I didn't reach that goal. What was missing from me? And if it's like no, because I didn't do X, Y, and Z, I didn't achieve it, but that's achievable. So I'm going to change what was missing or bring what was missing and go for it next month. Or give yourself permission to say, that was too ambitious.
Yeah.
Pull it back, like you're saying, pull it back, but I still want to push for it. And then that'll be more achievable. And then when you achieve it, there's your victory, and then you can move forward.
That's an excellent point, Mark, about the I loved how you described the failure aspect, where it was like, what didn't I do that I should have done? That's such a great way to reframe that. It's like the analogy I use is when you play Super Mario or video games, you had 3 lives, and when you died the first time, or at least for me, never was I just like, oh, I'm done with this game. No, you were addicted. You were like, no, wait, I should have jumped over that toad instead of under him, and then you redo it, and you're like, no, let me try it again. And you're so like hell bent on beating every level, and you figure out what went wrong, what went right. And that's exactly how you should tackle life. Is don't look at it as I messed up, so I suck at this. It's
and people still do that with computer games. They're like, this is dumb. And they throw it away, and then because I'm not going to achieve it, therefore it's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
So that's a good analogy as well. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest thing that holds people back these days?
Fear. And I love that acronym of FEAR, which is false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
And that is exactly what it is. You just put barriers up, you put barriers in front of you, and it's not necessarily based on any fact. It's conditioning that you've built up quite often from a young age. There's a lot of limiting beliefs that we develop through our conditioning and our immediate environment. And again, the first step is being aware. So it's that self-awareness, Joe, of like, all right, this is what I'd love to achieve. This is what I'm not achieving, and this is what's holding me back, and this is why. And I guarantee fear is the main thing that's even underlying the myriad of limiting beliefs, right? I'll get rejected. Even if it's like dating, it's like, I don't want to walk over to that girl because she'll reject me, well, if I was taller, she'd probably talk to me. Like all these limiting beliefs, like I believe, and you make those beliefs up in your head that I'm this, I'm not this, I'm not that, therefore I'll get rejected, and it's all fear-based. So the awareness and the acknowledgement of, okay, yes, I have fear, and it's okay, and this is probably why I have fear. And then the acceptance and forgiveness for being that way, you're a human being, is a big part of it. And then you go for the breakthrough. And again, it's practice. So you're aware of the fear, you're aware of what brings it on and what triggers the fear. So now it's time you understood that it's your mind, so now you get to practice putting yourself in as many situations as possible so that you get to feel what happens on the other side of attempting something. And more often than not, you find that, what was I worried about?
Yep, that's how it always ends up. You're still alive, you're still functioning. Yeah, it might hurt a little bit, but you move on, you learn from it, you progress.
So when, like I said, fear is underlying most things, and we mentioned comfort zone a lot, like reverting to the comfort zone and wanting to be comfortable. And that is driven by fear. So fear is preventing that limitless possibility that's on the other side of that unknown that we put so much emphasis on the unknown and how scary it is, and the fears that we have around that. Just it doesn't exist.
Yeah. On that same vein, how do you know, or what's your advice on when someone should quit versus when someone should keep going? How do they decide when they've hit that point?
I think I think if you, there's a balance there definitely, because I think there are, particularly in business, I think there are circumstances where you become way too attached and you feel way too invested to walk away. And then there's that intelligence sort of factor that needs to come in and say, all right, let's cut my losses. And I think the main thing is where you assess whether you've really put 100% in or not. So, and also assess how passionate you are about something. So I would say if you have that passion for it and that unwavering passion, so that if you're doing something for a month, 2 months, 3 months, you're trying and you're not getting the little victories that we spoke about along the way necessarily, or reaching as high as you would have liked to, but the passion, the fire still burns, then keep going. If you know that you are trying 100%, well, that's what I'm saying, the passion, then maybe if that passion's still there, now you know it's time to try something different in your approach to whatever it is you're trying to achieve, and be open to that, and be open to feedback is also very important. In that is actually seek feedback. So I still want to do this thing. I still believe in this thing, but for whatever reason, things aren't going my way, or I'm not achieving the goals. So I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to try something different. If that passion dies, then I feel like it's time to try something else and search for something that gives you that passion, because that's feedback in itself. That the passion dies down because you haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve, or just in the trying you've figured out that actually I thought I would love this and then I don't, and that's okay. Move on, find your why, find your purpose, and it might take 10 years, it might take 10 days, but if you've always got that as your kind of true north, your compass of going for that, I think you can't go wrong.
Yeah, people they think they underestimate what they can do they overestimate what they can do in a week, and they underestimate what they could do in a full year. And I think people need to trust that it could be either 10 days or it could be 10 years, but
good point.
It's not a quick fix. It's a process, and you have to, like you said, you have to have a passion, or at least an interest in that, because you're going to have more ups and downs than you will end of the road. You know, that end of the road, I made it, is maybe a day old experience that you hit one day and you're just like, oh, I've made the $1 million. I've got the mansion, everything. And then next day, oh, I'm used to that now.
Well, I mean, and like we mentioned before, it's that attachment, and our metrics for success as well can be skewed. It's about the process. It really is. People don't realize this. They have the goal and they make that. Everyone wants to be happy. Everyone's searching for happiness. How does that look? I feel people need to reevaluate what happiness is to them. And I go back to, if you show gratitude for your life and everything around you, that's the first step toward enjoying the process. If you have passion for something and you get up and you grind and you make deep connections with people along the way, and it energizes you, let's say you didn't achieve the goal that you wanted to, or in a month's time, but you're having so much fun doing it, then that's life.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't that enough? Why does it have to end with that fancy car? Because I guarantee it ends with that fancy car. Great, that was nice. This is cool, and I feel good about myself. What next?
Yeah.
Because you want another fancy car, or you want something else, be careful not to get attached to the symbol of your idea of success.
And the other problem with that is with social media these days, man, everyone's only posting the greatest parts of their life. So here you are, we could probably find someone that's listening. They hear this, they're like, oh, I'm going to hustle. And they do it. They follow everything we've recommended. They're doing great. And then all of a sudden, what throws them off? They look at someone else who's doing something similar, and they're only posting the highlights. So now they're just like, wow, he or she's so much farther ahead of I am. Maybe I'm doing this all wrong. I should quit. And it throws people off, and it sucks that...
Joe, you've hit a very, very big point. And that is that their mindset, when you look... You've got to be careful. You're right with social media, because it's designed, I feel, it's got an evil side to it. It does. And there's a trainer and a life coach and a motivational speaker who's one of the best coaches I feel out there. His name's Chris Lee. I was lucky enough to have Chris coach me in a training course I did recently, and he has a book out, and it's about abundance and prosperity. And he talks about having that abundance mindset where you're not coming from a place of lack where you're like, I don't have this, how do I get that? Or I have this now, what if I lose it? So there's fear driving that scarcity mindset, so that if there's not enough out there for everyone, I've got to hold on to whatever I can get, and I've got to achieve that, and I've got to have that material thing because it will make me happy. And where he's coming from is, if you just believe that there's enough out there for everyone, and you have that mindset and way of being of just like, yes, I will achieve that. Money comes and goes. That's fine. What's important is again that gratitude piece. And if you look at social media from a point of scarcity, so in other words, you follow an account whose life looks perfect, amazing, great for motivation, absolutely. I'm not saying don't follow those people to help motivate you toward your goal. But the minute you start looking at that and feeling bad about yourself because you don't have that, you're living out of scarcity, not living out of abundance. Instead of just saying, good for them, even if that is real. Like, even if that is a true reflection of their life, or it's not. That's their journey, and that's wonderful. And I'm on my journey, and I'm going to achieve. I'm going to achieve what I'm going to achieve, and even if I don't, life's great. Does that make sense? Like it's just.
It goes back to what you were saying before about like, this is why I like to go into like what the childhood was like and growing up and your values, because that's what you can't worry about other people. You have to come back to what are my biggest core values, and how am I letting that guide whether I should keep going the route I'm going or not. Forget about everyone else. Are you sticking with what you believe in? Because you're not going to be, let's say I could promise you get $1 billion tomorrow, but you'd have to follow all these values you don't believe in and don't care about. You're not going to be happy. Whereas if I gave you half of that and said you get half the million, but you're going to follow all your core values, everything you believe in, you'll be way more fulfilled with that.
Fulfillment is the key. And listen, I am that guy sometimes. I'm not here to tell you I'm perfect in that regard. My career as a rugby player at that level was very much that I lived out of kind of comparing myself to other people. While your teammates you were bonding with, at the same time you're competing with them at the same time. Quite often you're in the same position. It's like only one of you can get that starting position. So you're friends, but at the same time, and it was an environment that always promoted comparison. It was, that guy's getting paid more money. That guy's driving a fancier car to training. I want that car. I want to be, and then it's acceptance. And that's what we do as humans, right? We feel the need to be accepted by people. So we do crazy things in order to gain that acceptance that we think will make us happy. So I was in that environment, and I was that guy where I sometimes got upset and depressed about it, would ruin my day, and I'd lose sleep over why one of my teammates is earning more money than me or seems to have more success than me, rather than just focusing on what I have and what I'm capable of achieving as well, just me.
Yeah.
And I know for the listeners and the viewers, it's very easy to say, but trust me, I can compare directly to how I feel in my way of being and the way I wake up in the morning, how much better it feels and fulfilling that I've found a way to not compare and not to think from what don't I have that they have, but wow, look at what I have.
Goes back to gratitude again.
It shifts everything. And that, as you said before, is for me what life is all about and what happiness is about, rather than what I don't have now that what I will achieve, especially if it's a material thing that can easily come and go.
Yeah. What's the biggest goal you're trying to achieve right now? What are you working on? What's lying ahead for you?
Thank you for asking. Yes, so my big vision is, you can probably tell how passionate I am about this area of emotional intelligence.
That's good though.
So what I'm developing is a program, an emotional intelligence curriculum and program specifically for professional athletes and, with the mind of going into college athletes and then younger, because I believe that this kind of awareness, training and education should be presented at the youngest age possible, which is why, again, that's another thing that's something I may tackle down the line, and I acknowledge the people that are changing the face of education for kids is because emotional intelligence and mindfulness training, you're never too young to start that. And the younger you can start, then you can carry that on into life, obviously. So it's going to be a challenge to try and break into the big sports with this kind of approach to their performance, but more importantly, their life. So there's more and more evidence coming up. A friend of mine, an old colleague in rugby, committed suicide in February, which compelled me to this kicked me off on my mission, because it's all around. And I thought back to my career, and he struggled with the transition out of being a professional sportsman into civilian life. He played for so long. He got attached to his identity as a sportsman and didn't have enough awareness or practice in developing his higher self, who he was, not what he did. So he was very attached to what he did. And then when that was taken away and he had to try and find something that replicated that, there wasn't anything, or not to his satisfaction, and it became a struggle. And there's other reasons why, like the environment, the sporting environment can be brutal and very unforgiving and not a safe place for people to express their mental struggles with something. So that's then another issue and problem, is because when you hold it in, it manifests to the point where it can be fatal. In his case,
especially with guys, we're taught to be so
especially
macho, not
guys.
Express what's going on inside. I think we really need that, especially
We do.
at sports levels, like football players, rugby players. I'm sure they're taught to, like, you hold that in. You're here to be a man, quote unquote, and hit people and be strong and not show weakness. So
that is a vision and a mission of mine, is to break down that stigma in these sporting environments. It doesn't mean that it has to get in the way of performance. They're aggressive sports. You need it's high adrenaline, it's high testosterone. I honestly believe that you can still, it's finding a way to switch that on and off. There's already, especially in the game of rugby, there's tremendous. If you look at MMA, there's a tremendous amount of respect between the competitors. Sometimes a lot of trash talk and stuff like that. There's showmanship, but it's proven to me, and I believe that it's still possible. Seeing how they are with each other, like why it might seem that they're being aggressive, especially boxing and MMA. They're building the crap out of each other. But at the end, they're hugging each other for the most part in mutual respect for who they are as people and the values of the sport. And rugby's very much like that. So you can absolutely play the game, play it full out, be the best you can be, win the trophy. But then when the whistle goes, the final whistle goes, you can then step back into who you really are and develop and grow that aspect of you. It's your higher self. It's your authentic self that has nothing to do with how much money you're being paid. It has nothing to do with, how many autographs you're getting from little kids, because we're humans. It's very easy to get attached to that and feel good about that. That's external validation, but it's not real. The ego is what's excited by that and what's driving the need and the want for more of that. So that's what I'm developing now, is a program that can make athletes aware of, do what you're doing. It's amazing. You're going to get so much out of it, and there's so many opportunities that can come from it and skills that you're learning and building. But understand this. It's very easy to get attached to everything that's going on right now, and you are setting yourself up for a fall and possibly depression and possibly suicide as you come out of that sport and you don't have an awareness or sense of who you really are.
Do you have a name for that yet? Do you have like a...
My company's called Winning EQ. So EQ being the abbreviated version of emotional intelligence. You've got IQ and intelligence quotient. Technically, it doesn't make sense because it's not emotional quotient; it's emotional intelligence.
Sure.
But yeah, winning, that word winning kind of it sums up a manner of all areas. It could be winning in life. It could be, but it suggests it's for athletes as well. And at the moment, I'm just doing a study, gathering as much information as possible from as many athletes, different sports, to really try and target the areas that they're challenging most with when it comes to transitioning out of sport and during their sport. This is to be delivered while they're in sport. There's pressures that a lot of athletes struggle with while they're in. It's not just about retiring. It's about understanding how to cope with the pressures of being such a high-level sports person.
That's so awesome. I fully support that. That's amazing.
Thanks,
Maybe
Joe.
we'll put on in the show notes a link to that if you have anything. And we might have to have you back on here in like a year or so to see where that's gone and see where you've progressed.
There we go. Let's make the intention. There's the goal. I'll add that to my goals, and I have to be kicking it out of the park because I'm coming on to Joe's show. I can't let him or the viewers down.
Yeah, that's another like subtle thing I've been trying to do with this is I started this podcast because I wanted to, it's not just for me. I like the fact that hopefully I could scale this one day and reach more people, but I even take more gratitude from the fact that I could potentially help give a bigger reach for my guests that are on here. Yeah. And if this gets them one step closer to that, then to me, that feels way better than even me succeeding, just knowing I helped someone get better at what they do. And it's also I'm hoping like kind of an accountability tool, like you were saying, where it's like, now the intention's set and now.
Okay. While we're talking about it, if you don't mind me asking, so you've got the benefit of numbers to see how many viewers and how many listeners, right? So do you have a number and a date in mind of what kind of number you want to hit by when?
Date, ideally a year. So I was looking at some stats where they say if you get per episode each month 150 or more downloads, you're better than 50% of the podcast out there. Right now, depending, I'm noticing it's hit or miss. I definitely I'd say about half my episodes right now have been hitting that, which is nice, which is a great start for me.
That's wonderful. Congrats.
But I'm noticing that's more dependent on who that person is and how many people are familiar with that person rather than the marketing on my side. So I got to beef that up a little bit. And then the next interval is they say if you get 500 plus downloads, you're in the top 10%. So I'm trying to enter that. And then they say if you get, this is starting to get into Tim Ferriss numbers now, if you get thousands of downloads, now you're in that top 1%. But
I get the process. I'm more interested in, give me a number. Let's declare it.
In a year, I'd like to be getting 500 plus downloads. So I started this podcast, this is going to be episode 9. So it'll be about a month, 2 months ago that I started this podcast. So a year from now, I'd like to be at 500 plus per.
You'd like episode. To be?
Yeah.
What's possible?
Definitely 300. I think I could hit 300 because I know for sure it's been a set goal of mine to keep increasing the guests. And
let me make a distinction. That's probable.
Okay.
I'm asking you what's possible. Not what is possible. Not what's probable. Not what's realistic. What is possible? How many downloads?
300 for sure then, because if I can get 150 now, I think within the year I can.
Oh, absolutely. 300's, yeah. I think you're misunderstanding. For me, when I hear what's possible is, if you heard the expression, anything's possible.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not
higher.
Why not? So that's what
thousands would be the what's possible.
So that's what I mean, just going back to what and you asked me like what would I recommend and how to go about it with people. We talk about that vision, talk about that declaration, and there's a great story that I've heard actually. Jim Carrey, you've probably heard it as well. On one of his interviews, it might have been with Oprah. He said that when he first moved to California, he was wanting to become an actor, and he made a declaration of, I'm going to earn $10 million.
Oh, I've heard this.
Have you heard this?
Yeah.
3 years' time. So instead of just saying that, he actually wrote a check out to himself, $10 million for services rendered, signed Jim Carrey. He was going to pay himself $10 million. And he kept it in his wallet until that thing became like so brittle it was falling apart, every time he pulled it out. But it was there as a reminder. It was his vision. And he obviously put in all the goals and the steps along the way, and he hustled, and as we know. And then he started becoming, famous and big, and did a couple of movies. And then he, 3 months before that check was due, right, or dated, he got signed for Dumb and Dumber, which was $10 million. He got paid $10 million, just like his check said. But that is what I'm trying to say, is the power of that was possible. If he thought to himself, what's probable based on what's going on for me right now? I mean, he was probably getting rejection after rejection early on, as a lot of actors do. And if he based on what was probable at that rate, he's like, I might get 10,000 for a movie. I see other people getting that I feel like I'm. But he was like, 10 million is possible because it's the industry. So that's what I'm going to declare. And then, like I said to you, is not having the fear to put that. And as you chase it, just not being attacked. If I don't get 10 million then, I've gone for it and I've put it out there, and maybe I'll get it in another year. But it's all about just thinking big, playing big, and not playing small. And that's what, after 7 years after my retirement, I've finally realized that I've been playing small, I've been playing safe. I've been relying on the savings and the insurance payout and stuff to be like, well, I'm cool, I got time. But my limiting beliefs, my fears, the way I've been conditioned, the fear of rejection with the just day-to-day interactions, whether it be relationships, whether it be dating, whether it be business, holding back from just going in and going for it, has led me to not being where I think I was capable of being. So that's for you viewers out there. It's to give you some perspective and give you some motivation and give you some hope. It took me a while, but I'm now at that mindset, and that's the most important thing for me, is the mindset shift. Now anything's possible, and I'm going to go for it, but I'm not going to hate myself if I don't achieve it. But that's going to show up every day in my life now, and that's so enjoyable when you've set your bar high, and going after it every day is motivating and energizing, and to me, what life is all about. So I'm going to ask you again, how many podcasts? I don't know, I'm putting you on the spot, because this is, we're gonna look back in a year's time and go,
this is very true.
Yeah, I enjoy doing this with you. And you can edit this out. I don't care. This is,
No, we got to keep it raw.
Yeah.
So what is possible? Now, we're going 1,000 plus on there. That's what we are going for.
Yep.
So you heard it here. It is. We're recording this on August 23rd. This episode will probably be released in 2 weeks. So I've got till next August. And what I recommend is also an effective way, is actually write it down and have it somewhere you can see it. Have a constant reminder, and that's your vision. And then everything. Then you set your goals from that, which you're already doing. But you're already, in my mind, and this is fantastic, and you've got what it takes. But it's just that maybe there's that something holding you back. 1,000, I love it. All right. That's always, I'm glad you called me out on that, because it is something I still work on. It's also why I started this podcast, to seek out that and break that out of me. Is I'm very in my head analytic thinker, and I'm almost too realistic about things, where in certain situations that's amazing because you're very practical.
Yeah.
But then in other ones, like as we're seeing here, I tend to play it safe when I shouldn't be, or when there's no need to necessarily be playing it safe, where you're better off going more moonshot. And like you said, you can always readjust and fix it along the way. But
that's wonderful. I'm glad you acknowledge that. And just to take it one step further, when we talk about fears and we talk about goals and visions, I'm actually more motivated by the fear of being on my deathbed and looking back with regret. That's a huge one for me, is that I'll look back and just think, you know what? I was good enough to do more. Or there was that one time when I had the chance to say this to that person that could have changed the course of my life. And deep down, I knew it, right? We lie to ourselves constantly. We're inauthentic with ourselves, and we tell ourselves lies to, again, make us feel more comfortable. Whereas wouldn't it be nice if we could all find a way to really start living our authentic selves? And that's, like you said, what you've done now, and that's being accountable. That's playing big. That's. I know that with this mindset, and I practice it every day, that I'm gonna. And that's the thing as well. We never know. I say deathbed. I imagine myself at 80, 90 years old. There's no guarantees that's going to happen, which motivates me even more.
Yeah.
To make sure that I'm committed to that. No regrets. No holding back. Think big, play big every single day. And that's when I wake up and I'm like, it's impossible to feel sorry for myself. It's impossible to be depressed. Doesn't mean I don't have dips.
Sure.
Doesn't mean I revert back to my old way of like, I haven't had a little small victory for a while now. Man, I feel shit. What's the point? Do I need to reevaluate? It's mindset. And because of the work I've been doing and the awareness I have now, like, it's just me. Shift that mindset into abundance, into gratitude, into playing big, into no regrets, and I'm going to have an awesome day. And then the next day will be just the same.
That's awesome. That pretty much answers my final question I was going to ask you, which was, what is the one piece of advice you can give someone to close the mind-action gap, which is, here's the idea of what I want to do, versus you actually doing it and not stalling like people usually do in between. There you go.
I answered it. It's different for everyone, but that is, I think, have that thing, that vision, that purpose. Like I said, I think it's even that kind of real. I don't like using the word fear, even though I sort of express that as a fear of no regrets, but find that mantra, that's something that really takes you to that place. For me, I have that event, I have that broken neck, I have that moment where I'm lying there, and for a second before I felt my toe wiggle, my big toe wiggle, right before that I felt like life's over as I know it, which would have been all right in the end. But at that time, to be able to compare that and then go into, I've been given a second chance, I'm going to make the most of it, that helps me snap out. We all need something, a touchstone that can just take us into that place that's like, nope, not now, not today. I don't know how that looks for you out there, guys and girls, but
we'll call it their broken neck moment. Everyone needs a broken neck moment.
There you go. Okay. Find your broken neck moment and write it, represent it in however you want. Take it with you. Have it on your bedroom wall. Have it on your mirror. But just have it there as a constant reminder. And life's too short, guys. Snap out of it.
Yes. What's your social media? Where can they find you?
So I actually, I also have this blog called the Yog blog, which we didn't get to talk about, but it's all right. Yog's life is
young old guys. I was looking at that.
Yeah. So it all started with me and my buddy. We determined that at a certain age we became the older guy, and it was when we were we're single, we're out there kind of. It's like, especially younger women aren't looking at us the same way anymore. So it started from that, but then it's like, well, look, are we the older guy? Yes, we are. But it's like, but we're young at heart. We don't feel old. So the key then is just embracing the aging process and finding ways to remain young at heart and live your life to the fullest and have fun with it and don't take yourself seriously. So the blog's a fun side thing that, again, I love working on it and could perhaps bring it back into the fold. But that's, where I post most of my things is on Yog's Life. and that's
we'll
my
add a link to
Instagram.
that in the description.
Yeah, yeah. And Rugby Method obviously is still active, and that's another Instagram account if you want to get some training ideas and things like that. And come and join us on a Saturday morning, 9 a.m., Virginia Avenue Park, group fitness.
Santa Monica.
Santa Monica, you'll love it. Little farmer's market next door. You can get
Oh.
your goods, your produce afterwards as well. It's perfect. Reach out to me though.
There you go.
So I know
and
you're
then,
coming.
did you give your Instagram also, or your?
Instagram for that is just Rugby Method.
And then like yours personally.
Personal one is Yogg's Life. So that's my
Yogg's Life.
personal.
Okay,
I've rolled into one. Look, there's
Yeah.
man, there's not enough hours in a day
I
like
know,
we
it's a
discussed.
whole-
Try to have
four different
accounts, 3 different accounts. So Yogg's Life, have a laugh, get some inspiration, and Rugby Method. Come and join us. You'll have a good time.
Awesome. Mark, thank you for coming in today. Had a real good talk.
Me too,
Hit it
Joe.
all,
Thank you. I love what you're doing. It's fantastic, man. Keep it up.
Thank you. And we will see him in a year, guys. You heard it. And we'll see where I'm at in a year.
1,000 minimum.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes and Stitcher. I hope you do enjoy what you heard and got some big takeaways. And if you do have any guests in mind, people you want to hear on here, feel free to email me at theahamomentpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, guys.